back to NX Just for a Podcast. As you can see, we're still in the pier, beautiful location, and you might notice our tyres are a bit different tonight, but we'll get on to that. Once again, a shout out to our sponsor, HD Tiling. If you need any work done, we'll put the post up on our page, and also 86 Media, the man Gordon behind the camera. So, how you been, Jordan?
Been no bad. It was my birthday on Sunday, 29th of January, so I had a wee good birthday in that. And
Good. How's your birthday sit on?
No, well, I did in the lock-out, so I was near a bit of cold water fairy people. We'll go into that in the podcast, but that was good. We've got new mics here, I know. We're venturing out now, we're getting there.
So, will we get our guest on?
No.
Why would we not get our guest on?
No, Paul Neal.
Alright,
There
Paul
he
Neal,
is.
everybody.
How he's doing? Alright, happy birthday, Jordan.
Aye, cheers. How are you, Paul? You
Aye,
alright?
good mate, aye, good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me along to talk to you.
No, thanks for coming on. So, basically, what we do is we always kind of want to find out a wee bit about our guests and what's happening and stuff and where he kind of grew up. So, you're from Dumbarton? Oh, you were originally from Bonhill?
Originally from Bonhill, aye, grew up in Leyden, and now I'm in Dumbarton. I get married, we moved to Dumbarton, and I've been in Dumbarton for the last 20 years or something. I don't know anything about anywhere round about Dumbarton or that, but I could wander you about up a hill with my eyes shut,
Aye.
where everything's kept, aye, but Dumbarton's a different ballgame. Still try to, people say, do you know what I mean, this road or this street or whatever, I'm like, where's that? Don't know what it is.
No.
So aye.
So what do you reckon your wee place at the pier? Do you like it? You been in for something?
Oh, aye. Oh, good scene. So this was nice, right? Let's talk about the microphones. He's obviously spent a couple of pounds.
Well, me and him have
on
not.
the aye.
That's our sponsors.
Remember,
They're
we've got some fan questions in, so we've only been able to pick out two because we had that many, and obviously we have a script to stick to.
Aye.
So the first question is, this divides opinions, so I'll tell you my answer. Would you call it a house coat or a dressing gown?
So it's definitely a house coat.
I'm dressing gown. But it is a house coat. But I've just grew up with that. What about you?
I've always kind of a house coat. I've never really.
It's a house coat.
Aye,
Because it's
I've
a
never
coat
really
you wear
known.
in the house.
I know.
A dressing gown is, I suppose, if you live in Bearsden or Mulgai, it's a dressing
well,
gown.
I've got to live there.
Because you're maybe going somewhere.
Well, I've
so
got
you've
an hoodie.
maybe, and I suppose there's maybe I don't know, you can't get into it nowadays, but you know, there's maybe a gender thing in that, like, women will wear dressing gowns because they're more likely to be in front of a mirror getting dressed.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas men are maybe more kind of house coat, smoking jacket thing.
I'll call it a
So
house
I
coat
don't
for
know.
that.
You can call it whatever you like.
Aye,
Do
call
you
it
know what I
whatever
mean?
you want.
Do you like the hoodie?
I call it a house coat. No, I don't like hoodies. No, they're no mark-up with tea at all.
I like it.
They
I like
don't.
this one. Well, Paul brought me a house coat.
Brand
And,
spanking new.
Aye, so look
A
at that.
spanker. Aye, so that is nice. Do you know what I mean? It's cosy, but that's no too drafty. No for me.
So, next one. What products do you put in your hair? If you put any in your hair?
I don't.
Somebody
I'm
must have liked
natural.
your hairstyle in the photo you put up.
No, so what I used to do is I would just get a wee drop of water and I would stick my hair up for pineapple heat. Do you know what I mean?
So what?
So just a wee drop of water in your hair, and that's only when you're doing pineapple heat, but no, I don't bother me. I'm too old for products, to be perfectly honest. Do you know what I mean? Which is unfortunate, but you will at some point get to a point where products isn't a thing for you.
know,
The
I
new
like
users
mine.
are probably spending a fortune on products.
No, I
Or
went for a haircut.
stealing somebody else's. Maybe stealing somebody else's about the
I
house.
went for a haircut before I came here.
We've not finished it yet, have we?
Well, she said she was going to tune in. I know.
That's just his response.
It's old haircut in instalments.
Here I think for you actually go to the same barber as Michael Beale. Sorry, he goes to the same barber as me because I was there first.
I think that's a good thing, is it?
I mean, Michael Beale, same barber. So,
We've all got to throw in a Rangers thing, haven't we?
what team do you support?
I knew that was coming, Celtic.
There's too much Celtic in
Aye,
this
isn't
podcast.
there?
I think I'll need to
Aye.
chuck that.
No,
But
good.
so is that your?
That's the questions done. We had
Good.
a few, but thanks for asking questions. It was a good wee fun.
So, Paul, if nobody knows, do you want to introduce a wee bit what you do? Like, also read a wee
Aye.
joke about knowehnoo. That's your kind of, what would you call that? Page, company?
So that was my social media.
Right.
So I was trying to... Basically, my whole kind of premise was about talking about mental health and what mental health is and what mental health isn't and where it comes from and all that kind of stuff, because I really struggled with my mental health. I really, really struggled to the point I was suicidal. And as well as me suffering, my family suffered. My family suffered terribly, and it's very difficult when you're struggling and you know and you feel that life's difficult for other people because of how you're being, because you're experiencing problems with your mental health. So once I started to feel better and once I started to understand what mental health was and where it came from, I wanted to try and do something about that. I wanted to try and start the conversation about what mental health is and where mental health comes from. And that's about, it's about helping me understand that, but it's also about starting the conversation with other people to try and get the help and support that people need, myself included, to understand what is good mental health.
Yeah.
So the baseline is for that is, well, if it's good mental health, what's the opposite of that? Poor mental health. And that's what I experienced. So knowehnoo was about knowing what mental health is and where it comes from. And that was why I set up the website and I set up a social enterprise called knowehnoo, which was about people getting support for their mental health. knowehnoo.
Yep.
It's not fascinating, it's brutal. I spoke to somebody just yesterday who said that they'd been at their GP and they had been referred for CBT, which is the modality of therapy that you get through your GP and that, predominantly. And the person was told that yes, they're a candidate for CBT, but there's a 5-month waiting list.
Oh, 5 months? That's not used to nobody in it, no?
No, so I was under the impression that it was 12 weeks, that it was 3 months. That's what I thought it was. But it's 5 months. Now, that's brutal. So just to leave somebody and just say, oh, we'll come and we'll see you in 5 months.
Aye, that's...
it's not helpful. So that's why... So the name knowehnoo was about getting support knowehnoo, but the culture that we live in as well is everybody wants everything right away. That's why Amazon Prime's a thing. You can pay £7 a month and you get your parcels next day. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's
you used to have to wait for days for parcels. Now you can get stuff tomorrow.
That's why we wanted to get you on, because I'll probably get into it as well. Like, it was a really good opportunity to speak about mental health. Like, because see if this podcast can help one person, that's how we looked at it as, because as you said with the GP, like the waiting list and stuff, and just people not wanting to get help. People talking about it might make them go, it actually isn't that bad.
Well, you don't want it. You don't want to talk about it because it's brutal.
It is.
Because you need to be very vulnerable. And it's very difficult to be vulnerable when you've actually been designed to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to protect yourself. You don't want to feel bad. That's why addiction's such a thing. Do you know what I mean?
Addiction's a massive in it.
It's massive, but I mean, the reason that people take substances, drugs and alcohol is because they want to feel something different to how they feel.
I know, but it's once you're in that addiction, I think it's hard to get out of it, obviously.
It's brutal.
But eventually, you're on about drug. It's a lot of things, but there you've got like the gambling and people are addicted, like a lot of things, isn't there? Like prescription drugs, which I'll say.
So I was asked at the last podcast that I did, and I did, and I had the privilege to do it, and it was really great that the Misfit Mo asked me to come on and do her thing in the car, which was brilliant. And I spoke to her, you know, about that whole thing, and she was saying, but when did it start for you? You know, when did your mental health problems really start for you?
So that's what I was going to say. So
when did it start
for you?
So what I've recognised is, or what I've came to understand, I didn't recognise it, I've come to understand is that this started very, very early for me. But I didn't know that. Because how would you know that if that's just your experience?
I was similar.
If you go crashing about life, you're just doing what you're doing. So I was a gambling addict at 15. I was mad for gambling at 15, but I didn't know that. Do you know what I mean?
Was it norm to you, sort of thing? But...
Well, I had, you know, I'd tried things, you know, like gas and petrol, and I'm not promoting any of that stuff. I'm not saying doing it. But that's what I did when I was in my early teenage years, to get a buzz, to get a rattle. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know what you're
when
saying.
we were younger, I don't know what it is now, but I probably do. I've probably heard it from my own children. But for us, it was, you know, in school, it was buzzing Tipex dinners. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, it was just that kind of, you want to feel something different. No, you don't. I didn't know that. I just knew that I felt discomfort.
So how was it? Were you like kind of like on the horses and stuff, and like how?
No, so it was the arcades.
Was it?
It was fruit machines. I was mad for the lights, the bells.
I feel like obviously we're younger than you, but also I can imagine you could have got into pubs at that age and stuff. Aye,
Well, no, because I looked dead young, so I couldn't get into
Could you not
pubs.
get in?
Nor did I have, in a game which is interesting, I didn't have the confidence to walk into boozers either.
Right.
So I couldn't have done it. So it was just like everybody does. It's underage drinking. You know, you just get into it, and then before you know it, for me, I just liked it, and it didn't matter whether it was drink or drugs. I just liked what it done to me. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, so like the gamble.
And again, so I didn't know then. I didn't know at 15. I didn't know at 30. You know, even though I was in, and I hate the phrase, I was in recovery. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what the recovery community call it. You're in recovery.
How is that? But if you've got a problem, like how you're recovering, if that makes sense. Like, so if
Because
you're
you're not doing what you were doing before. So see when you're like when it's drink or alcohol, you know, alcohol or drugs or whatever it is you're taking. I can only speak for me. I was up in a good.
Oh, I
Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, I thought.
So
Aye.
you're not doing that anymore because you're staying away for that substance. But I was in recovery for a very long time. But I didn't really know why I had. For me, it was drink. I didn't know why I drank in the first place.
So what age did you start kind of drinking that?
Probably about 14, but I'd been into other things before that. Do you know what I mean?
So how
when
did
I
that
say
come
any other
about?
things, I'd tried other things before that. But then I started just underage drinking and, you know, going to underage discos and just what young people, I think what young people do.
I know, I was going to say that.
Do you know what I mean?
Like your mates going out and stuff.
Aye.
And you're just kind of
then-
following about.
Aye, but I was then, when I was drinking, I couldn't get enough of it. Do you know what I mean? So, and I chased that. I wanted that feeling because that feeling was different to how I felt.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean?
But the ages, but you're never going to know. But my wee brother's
No.
16 and he never know.
But I suppose you're not going to know, and I suppose me, for somebody that identified as having a problem with drink, right, if I can say that, or in recovery or whatever it is you call it, I just didn't take that substance anymore. Do you know what I mean? But when I was using that substance, it was because I didn't want to feel how I felt. Now, I didn't know that at the time. I know that now. I actually only found that out about 3 or 4 years ago.
Did you?
Which is
Crazy,
dead
isn't it?
sad. But see, if I'd have known that when I was 16 or 17, that was why I was behaving the way I was behaving. That's why I was doing what I was doing. So I knew, and my children can't turn round and say to me now that they're off their nut or they're out their tits all the time. And this is why it is. There's no magic or fantasy involved in it. If you have got an addiction, it's, you know, so they say that not everybody that's been traumatised is going to become an addict. But every addict has been traumatised.
That could be a
Now,
number of
that's
things,
fascinating.
couldn't it? Like trauma, that could be a number of things. It's not just one thing.
Aye. No, but so trauma, most people think that trauma is, you know, war-torn countries. Do you know what I mean? Or a rape or something, you know, really egregious. But traumas can have big T's and they can have small T's. So a trauma for somebody could be getting ignored by somebody. So one of the first videos that I put out was about just say good morning. Just say hello to somebody because you don't know how that other person's feeling. But somebody just acknowledging you, somebody just letting you know that you're there actually makes that person feel better. Every single one of us, every single human being just wants attention. They want to feel valuable enough that they're worthy of getting your attention. So somebody just saying hello actually lets you know that they're there.
Aye, they're
Do you know
there.
what I mean?
Was it hard for you, like, starting this up? Because then obviously you doing that, you kind of had to go back to talking about stuff that you struggled with. Was that hard?
I don't know, Shay, is the answer to that. It was very, very difficult because I now find myself in the position where I'm unable to continue with the social enterprise. So I'm in a bit of a limbo stage at the minute in that I don't know what I'm going to do next. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's for the point of view. I think this is really important. But me, I'm unable to endure the stress of setting up a business. Now, what I've learned about me and about experiencing trauma, right? So my father died when I was 1, right? So that is considered in the scientific literature, if you will, as an adverse childhood experience, right? So I experienced an adverse childhood experience. If there's someone in your household that uses drugs or alcohol, that's also considered to be an adverse childhood experience. So tick for that for me as well, right? Yeah. So I experienced adverse childhood experiences. I didn't know that. I had no concept of that because that was just my experience. That's how I grew up. I didn't know that experiencing those things were going to actually have an impact on my biology and my chemistry, my biochemical existence, that I call it. Do you know what I mean? So those things that happened to me in childhood had a really prolific impact in me and how I developed and how I grew up. So it was only when I was then faced with severe depression. So I goes to the doctor and the doctor says to me, "You've got depression." I says, "I don't think I have." Do you know what I mean? I can't have. Because as far as I was concerned, I was, gregarious, outgoing. I was fun time Frankie. I was a great laugh. So I couldn't have depression. Do you know what I mean? And then it was only after a couple of weeks that I really started to shut down and that I was unable to function, and that's when I, couldn't get out of the house, couldn't do anything. I didn't for a second put that back to I experienced trauma in childhood. Therefore, I've got a very low tolerance to stress. So I find stressful situations, I can find them overwhelming very, very quickly. Yeah. Now, this is all stuff that I've learned, and that's what I kind of mentioned in my last video in December. So December, I never put any videos out, and that's because I was shut down for the whole of December. I couldn't function, I couldn't engage, I couldn't talk to anybody, and that includes my own family. And that's a horrible situation to be in. But that's what happens biologically and chemically. When you experience depression, your body shuts down in order to protect itself. So even understanding that is actually, there's a comfort in that. Because you're no off your head. You're no mental.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean?
You get an understanding it.
You've shut down because your body and your brain is overwhelmed. And it's just finding it too much, so it's shut down to protect you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it, when you're experiencing that, it doesn't make it any better. But as you start to come out of that, you then start to recognise that that's what happened to me. I became overwhelmed with stress and I shut down. Because my wife knows that that's what happens, she can then say, well, that's what's happening. You're not sitting there going, he's a lunatic, he's a loon ball, he's got mental health problems, don't know what's wrong with him. Do you know what's wrong with him? He's became overwhelmed with stress. His body's shut down, so he's unable to function. He can't engage, can't phone anybody, can't talk to anybody, can't engage with his friends, he can't go out. That's why when you go to the doctors, they say, exercise. It's not helpful, because you can't physically do it.
I don't want to go out and exercise.
You can't do it, Jordan.
You just want to sit about and you're just in your house coat,
you're
no
shut
move.
down, you've got no motivation.
Must be a tough place, especially
it's
as you
horrible.
say.
But what's much harder is when you don't know why that is. So see, the first time that happened to me, and I didn't know why that was, that's why I wanted to commit suicide. That's why I wanted to kill myself.
That must have been... See, I actually seen that thing. I've been working in Livingston this week, and I went for something to eat, and I walked through the shopping centre, and there was a sign, so we knew we had you on, and you just looked at it, and it was 18 people a day in the UK commit suicide. Mm-hmm. Now, 18 people a day. Mm-hmm. So I remember it stuck with us for about an hour, and I went onto my phone, and do you know that's 6,048 people a year?
Mm-hmm.
That's
brutal.
6,048 people a year.
So that 6,000... How many?
6,048.
6,000. So, aye. So over 6,000 people kill themselves. That's somebody's mother, sister, daughter, brother, father, mother. Do you know what I mean? So the lives that are impacted as a result of that. So that's why I was that's why I wanted to try and do something in this space. I wanted to raise the conversation about mental health. So suicide is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. Now, it doesn't feel like that, because you think that's the answer. You think that's the best thing to do. And I say you think that's the best thing to do because I felt that I was the cause of suffering, not just for me, but for my entire family. So therefore it would be better for them if I wasn't here. Now,
that's never the case, isn't it?
No, but that's no... I suppose rationally or logically, that's not the case. But often, all the time, what happens when you experience stress is that the cognitive part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain, the rational part of your brain actually shuts down. Because if you're under stress, if you're in a state of fear or a state of fight or flight, you don't need to start then saying, oh, what should I do? Should I run away? You don't need that part of your brain. So your attention, your brain's attention is actually on getting blood to your muscles so that you can
see what you're saying about actually
off.
Knowing what's up with you. Now, if this story drags on, I'll pay you for the hour. Don't worry. But,
Gary, we've spent it in the mics.
So a couple of years ago, my gran passed away, and it came to a point where I was finding I worked in Morrison's at the time, and I couldn't go to work. And I sat and spoke to my mum, and she was like, "You're probably grieving." And I was like, "I don't know what that is, but like, how am I?" And then see, the more I thought about it, well, your ex-girlfriend got a shout out, so I realised I went out with her at the time, and the last time I seen my gran, and people say, oh, but she did, I seen her and she was lying there, and I left, and as soon as I left, I was like, I forgot to say, like, love you, bye. Like, and she passed away, and that stuck with me for ages and ages. Like, see, if like my girlfriend was out, or maybe at the time we argued, I was like, right, I can't go to sleep until it's sorted, because anything could happen. And that's what my life was like. Everything that happened, I was like, oh, it could be the last time this happened, it could be the last time that happened. And I was obviously like, what the fuck's wrong with me? Like, what's actually going on? And I then kind of began to learn, after my mum said it's probably grief, that see, when you're grieving, you want to stay where you are in life, but everything else needs to keep going on around you. And I was like, I was freaking out, but see, when I found out and I knew it was wrong with me, even though I wasn't instantly okay, it still makes you feel more comfortable, even when you're feeling like shit, because you know what's happening.
You understand that, aye. And I suppose what's interesting, and it's just stuff that I've read and it's available, and I would, if anybody is struggling with their mental health, I would urge them to have a degree of discernment. Do you know what I mean? So just be aware of what you're reading and where the information is coming from, because there's lots and lots of information out there, and not all it's helpful.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I like to read books. I couldn't for a long time when I was, struggling with depression. But as I started to, improve, as my nervous system started to settle down, and I was able to concentrate a wee bit more, and I was able to engage a wee bit more, that's when I started researching about mental health and where does it come from and all of that stuff. And that's why I say the vast majority of problems of mental health are as a result of childhood trauma. But nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
How? What kind of message is that to be selling to anybody?
Why is that? But why do I know what to hear?
Because it's horrible. So when we think of babies, we think of these wee bundles of joy. So he then suggests that wee baby might have had a difficult experience. Now again, the last video that I spoke about, it's no bad parenting. It's not because the parents are bad. My mother wasn't bad. My mother was miles away from bad. But my mother was under a lot of stress. Do you know what I mean? So, and as human beings, we co-regulate. So the three of us are sitting here and we're chatting, and it's nice and it's pleasant. We've got lovely surroundings and that's nice. So from that point of view, we're all comfortable, we're happy. I told the two of you at the start that I was nervous. That's settled down a wee bit now. Aye. I feel a bit more comfortable because I've met you, we've talked a wee bit. So that's okay, because that's, as human beings, we co-regulate. So yous are happy, I'm happy. If yous were being loud and aggressive, I would feel the same. My body would automatically react to that. That's how we organise ourselves as human beings. We co-regulate. So if mummy or daddy is stressed out their nut, that's going to have an impact on baby.
Aye, I get what you're saying. See, the way you put that there, that is, I get what you're saying, because you're going to kind of take it off them a wee bit.
Aye,
so
and it's not their intention. Mummy and daddy's intention for you is always good.
Aye.
They want the best for you, even if they're standing at the side of the football park shouting and bawling. Aye. And you're going, what is that dick shouting at? Right, as has been my experience with my own children. Do you know what I mean? And then they get in the car and say, what do you know, you arsehole? You've never kicked a ball. Right? So, from that point of view, my intention has always been good for them. But that's not necessarily their experience.
No, I get
Do you
what
know
you're
what I
saying.
mean?
Aye, like, it could be like something simple. Like you've had a bad day at work, you're in trying to make your dinner, rushing about, and you're going, oh, for fuck's sake, and get a wee bit,
Aye,
not
you pick
agitated,
that
but
up,
Aye,
Aye,
yeah.
aye.
But you, as a child, you pick that up and then
Aye.
you say, can I get a, there's the van, or can I get an ice lol out of the fridge? And your day it was a bit Arctic roll to run about in a bowl. Do you know what I mean? So you'd ask for an ice cream or something. No, you can't. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, and it's like, aye, I
They're
know.
not responding to you. They're stressed. So it's no intentional. So it's no about bad parents. It's not saying that bad parents are bad. But if we understand that problems of mental health originate the vast majority of occasions as a result of trauma experienced in childhood. And again, there's big T's and there's wee T's. So a big T is losing a parent, losing a loved one. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
That's a big trauma. And part of that is, and again, this is a woman, she's written a couple of books in neuroscience, Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's very good and I would recommend you reading them. She talks about how the brain develops patterns. So when it comes to your, if it's a mother or a father or, a husband, wife, granny, whatever, you expect that person to be there.
Uh-huh.
So when that person isn't there, you experience grief because it's a loss. Because your brain's going, where are they?
Aye.
And when you don't get them there, that's a sadness. Do you know what I mean?
Well, since my gran passed away, I've drank 2 cups of tea because she made the best tea.
Aye.
Like, that's being serious. Like,
Uh-huh.
see if I'm out at work and my boss is like, do you want a tea or a coffee? I'm like, no,
No.
I don't want it.
Aye, because again, and I suppose that's, you associate that with your gran, and
Aye.
that's a memory of your gran, and it makes you feel sad, and you don't want to feel sad. So if you then take that up to when we were talking about addiction, and you feel something, and you don't want to feel that way, but Coke, or Ganj, or Budweiser, or whatever it is,
That
do you know
helps
what I
you
mean?
through it, that's the
For that,
substitute.
even if
that
helps
takes
you for
that
that
away.
for you, aye.
That takes that away. And if you have experienced, childhood trauma, and that largely your experience can be a constant negative. It's a constant discomfort. Because what happens is your nervous system gets into a state where you just constantly feel under threat, even when there's no threat there. Because as human beings, we've got a cognitive bias which tends to be negative, because ultimately we want to survive. So we stay away from danger. We don't like danger. We want to avoid it like a plague. So we look for danger in order to keep ourselves safe. And if your experience as a child has been stressful, which actually sets off your amygdala and makes you feel frightened, you don't want to feel frightened, because feeling frightened feels like something. And that's why mental health is a problem of feelings. It feels like something to be frightened. Do you know what I mean? But nobody wants to say, how are you? Oh, I'm frightened.
Aye, you don't want to say that.
Of course
It's always
you don't.
like, I'm good. Aye. Say, oh, how are you?
Oh,
I'm good.
how are you? But also, you don't want to say I'm frightened, because the next question is, what are you frightened of?
And that's when they don't want to talk about it.
No, because you don't know. Because it's just a feeling. Feeling frightened is just a feeling. But you can't articulate it. You can't verbalise it. Because it's just a fear. And that's what the vast majority of mental health problems are. It's your body's getting into your body is responding to perceived fear. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So your body perceives that there's maybe danger somewhere. And it could be see that association. It could be a noise. It could be a thought. It could be a smell. It could be a sensation. It could be this room.
It could be a place as
It could
well.
be a place. So anything that makes that association that then instigates that feeling, that fear response starts to kick in, your heart and lungs start to work, and then you start to feel uncomfortable. That's the beginnings of an anxiety attack.
What, so see, anxiety then, is that like it's hard, not hard for me to kind of understand. It is hard for me to
By the
understand.
way, I'm
but-
not an expert. This is just my experience.
gonna
And
say that, see,
because I've experienced anxiety, Jordan, I then
Aye.
go and say, well, what is anxiety? So anxiety is a fear of the future. So you're anxious.
About what's
and
going to happen.
What's going to happen, but you're also worried that you're not going to have the confidence to be able to deal with what's coming.
See, I remember you were saying like, you were always up for a laugh, and then they tell you were getting into a depression, like, how am I? I'm always like that, but I'm like, I know everybody's different, but I've always been kind of like, always up for a laugh, always kind of plodding away, and see when people say that, oh, depression stuff, I always go, well, no, because you kind of understand it a wee bit, but you always go, how, but like, they've got a nice car, they've got a house, they've got a nice family, they go on holiday, what is it to be depressed about? But see, like, you explaining that, it kind of makes you realise a wee bit, doesn't it? Like, just maybe things, you don't know everybody inside out, or how they're feeling, and what's happened in their life. No. Like, there you're saying your gran passed, I said to you, I didn't want to talk about this, but my mum died when I was 19, so what's that, 7 years ago? Well, 7 year in March. But see, I remember when it happened, like, obviously you're gutted, it is what it is, and I just kind of dealt with it, went back to my work after like a couple of weeks, it was fine. You just plod away with it, and then like, it wasn't kind of like 3-4 years after it, you kind of think about it, and I remember thinking like it started to be in your head all the time, but I was fine, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't, but I just always remember going like that, like sometimes it might be just, it doesn't happen there and then, it's just like kind of years on, like years in time as well. But as you say, like, you don't know, everybody's different, you're different from me. And of
course, but I suppose as well, so something like that, a traumatic experience, is difficult to, so if you're frightened of something, if something causes you discomfort, if you don't like spiders, you're not going to get near a spider.
You're not going to get near it.
So if something's uncomfortable for you, you don't get near it. That's just natural. So losing a parent is horrific. It's brutal. So you don't want to get near that, and then as you see, a couple of years later, you start to think about it and you start to process it, and do you know what I mean? Because you've got a wee bit of distance with it and you think, right, I'll try and approach that. But that's, for me, what's been really fascinating and also quite terrifying is, see if we don't start to have the conversations about what mental health is. Do you know the danger? And I don't mean to be dramatic with this, right? A lot of people, because a lot of people have experienced trauma, but they just don't know it. So for a lot of people, they don't know how close they are to actually tipping over the edge, like I did. So my experience of life was just so overwhelming that I tipped over into a severe depression. And then when I tipped into that severe depression, I had no idea what depression was. I didn't know what mental health was. I've got to be honest with you. I used to laugh at people that had problems with their mental health. I used to make fun of people that had depression.
Because you like,
why? Got on with them. We're all doing. You know, we all feel sad, got on with it. That's not what it is. That is not what depression is. Depression is brutal. Severe depression is unbearable.
Because you can't say anything, like, see if like, maybe you end up being off work and somebody's like, what's something like that, I just don't feel like it, and then they're like that, just go on with it, then that makes you feel like, fuck, I can't talk about it even more. No, so see that I don't want to go to work, I've not got the motivation to go to work, that's not a good place to be in. So you then need to understand, why do you feel the way that you feel? It's not a problem of thinking. It's why do you feel the way you feel? Why do you know of any motivation, which is energy? Why do you know of any energy to go and do what it is that you need to do? So it's like I spoke about December, I was shut down. So I can't do videos, I can't, do the things that I was wanting to do because I've experienced a lot of stress, I've experienced overwhelm, I've started to shut down, and now I'm in a depressive state because my body's just went, it's too overwhelming, we're exerting too much energy, there's a potential threat, therefore I'm taking over and I'm just shutting down because that's the natural way of things. That's the Gabor Mate talks about it. That's the kind of the mystery of the brain body connection. Do you know what I mean? That the brain just kind of says, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're just going to shut down. We need to rest, and that's why you end up in that state. But what you need to do is then understand, why do I feel the way that I feel? And in my experience, and it's only my experience, so I said that I was in recovery for a long time, and I don't like that phrase, but that's how we kind of, how it's recognised now. So peer-to-peer support, for me, wasn't helpful in the long term. It was great to know that there was somebody there
that I could talk to somebody, but they couldn't help me understand why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. They didn't talk to me about childhood trauma. They didn't talk to me about the amygdala and about how the brain responds to stress. They didn't talk to me about how your cognitive functioning will stop working, so you can't think straight, so you can't make decisions.
Yeah.
So peer to peer, they weren't, and it wasn't their fault. They weren't informed enough as to why that was happening. Do you know what I mean? It was great that they were there and they were supportive, but I needed to get to the bottom of why was I feeling the way that I was feeling.
How did you get to the bottom then?
So through counselling, Jordan.
Counselling? So how does that work then? Do you go and see somebody like every week?
Aye. So through counselling, so there's different, so like joiners, or I suspect tailors as well, right? You get different types of joinery. You'll get a shuttering joiner, you'll get a cabinet maker, you'll get a finishing joiner. Counsellors are exactly the same. So you'll get somebody that does cognitive behavioural therapy, you'll get somebody that does person-centred, you'll get somebody that does dialectic behaviour therapy, you'll get somebody that does...
Havening? You ever heard of havening?
No, sounds nutty, but...
I know.
Anyway,
What is that?
So
basically, I done it because I had to. Basically, like, you would sit with your eyes shut and stuff, and you would think, you need to think deeply of your traumatic experiences. And basically, whoever you're with is talking to you while you're doing it. And as you're thinking of the traumatic experiences, you need to flip it and then bring in a good experience. And it's kind of flushing it out your body.
Is it?
Very good. And I'll be honest, right, that's what's hard as well. Because see, when you need the help, you don't want people to know.
No.
So, like, I'll be honest, I had to, like, kind of get sorted out. But I had to just go like that, I've got a Zoom meeting with my college lecturer. Like, you need to lie on top of stuff, which makes it harder.
But that's what I'm saying about the whole... So see if we start to talk about where problems of mental health come from, right? And problems of mental health come from traumatic experiences in childhood. And again, I'm not talking about wars, I'm not talking about muggings, I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm just talking about your experience as a child was perceived by you to be traumatic.
Yeah.
It made you feel uncomfortable. It made you feel frightened. That's not because anything that your mum or dad or anybody else in your family was doing deliberately to you. That was just your experience. In life, even if we look at our own lives are exceptionally stressful. There's stresses everywhere.
And as you said earlier on, like, people have good days and bad days. I think it's how you deal with it, isn't it? Like, you've got to...
But I suppose if you've grown up in an environment where you felt safe, where you've been able to express yourself and be who you wanted to be your authentic self, your genuine self, then you're probably going to grow up as somebody that's more confident, more able to deal with those situations. If you've grown up in an environment that's been fearful, that's been, you've had to conform. So it's not about expressing yourself and doing what you want to do, it's you better.
Aye.
If you live in an environment that's of that nature, then that's going to actually stunt your development. Now, I'm not talking about you, I'm not talking about you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about that's what the scientific literature says.
So that's always right, but is that always right?
So my experience when I recall my childhood, that was my experience. Now that's not because my mother was bad.
Aye.
So my father died when I was born. So it was just my mother. So my mother raised us. So she must have been under tremendous stress. Just trying to feed us and keep a roof over our head.
Aye.
Never mind putting us to bed, tucking us in and reading us a story, which would be the ideal scenario. She's not got time for that because she's got 5 to sort out. Do you know what I mean? Even if you've got 1 to sort out, you're trying to hold doing a job, you're trying to keep a roof over your head. So that's very, very difficult. So for parents, that's exceptionally hard. I'm a parent now, and it's exceptionally difficult because you want the best for your children.
Yep.
But that's not your intention, might not be their experience.
I know what you're saying.
So I can't. So if my children then turn out and start banging gear into their arm or out their nuts Do you know what I mean? I then can't sit and rub my chin and go, oh, I wonder what's wrong with them. The reality is they experienced trauma in childhood, which ultimately I need to go like, horns up, that was me. But that's not about blame.
And that's not you've done anything bad.
No, that's then sitting down and explaining to me. And a large part of me doing what I'm doing is about then trying to communicate this so that when I have the conversations with my children, and if they start to do something, you know, they're out drinking more than they should be, or they're whatever it is that they're doing, I can then say to them, why are you doing what you're doing? Because if you're doing that more often because you're doing it to feel something different, you need to explore how you feel. I've said to both my children, if you want to go for counselling, I'll pay for it. Now, they don't think that they need to go. I don't think that they need to go. But I've said to them, if you want to go and speak to somebody, because what happens is, the reason you need to speak to somebody is your experience, everybody's experience is subjective. It's just your experience, right? So when I look at my experience, I justified my experience growing up. It was because of this, it was because of that. So all the feelings that I had, all these bad feelings, I had an excuse for them. It's because of this, it's because of that. See, when I sat down with somebody, another human being, in a trusting, ethical, unconditional relationship, where I felt that I was being listened to, and I explained to that person the story of my childhood, and that person then conveyed that to me and put a different perspective on it, that allowed me then to understand my experience of childhood and why I felt the way that I felt. So I fully understand now that I became an addict because of how I felt. I didn't want to feel the way that I felt, so I took a substance. It didn't matter whether it was petrol, gas, drink or drugs. I took a substance in order to feel something different.
At that time, that was your coping mechanism?
To get out. I wanted out. I didn't like how I was feeling, and that substance made me feel something different. So we then, go forward 20 years, and I then end up with severe depression. And then I've now got a recognised mental health condition. And I say, well, why have I got that? What's wrong with me? Now, my response to using drugs and alcohol was to go to a recovery programme. Do you know what I mean? And whilst that was helpful for me, and that was good for me because there were people there that were like-minded, that knew what it was like to do the things that I was doing and help me do that on a daily basis, that was really helpful. But it didn't help me understand why I did that in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
So see, you're on a bit like helping you went to counselling and stuff. See, is there anything else that maybe helped you? Like, I know this maybe go on a bit, but a lot of people go into like cold water therapy and stuff. Right,
so my view of that, and I said this when I was with Mary, the Misfit Mo, and I mean, again, I don't know if there's any information or research out here. I think it's self-harm for the middle classes. My boys do it, cold water bathing and all that.
You do it every night.
So from my point of view, so somebody that's experienced trauma, putting yourself into that environment, so my body's already in a state of alarm. It's in a state of threat. Me getting into cold water isn't going to change that because it's already hyper vigilant.
Right.
So I can, so cold water bathing. I mean, I did the cold water thing with my house coat on.
I was going to say it.
Aye, but that was me actually having a go at the cold water bathers.
And it didn't work for you?
No, I didn't do it to see if it worked for me. I don't see. I just don't understand why, if you've got a higher heart rate, because they talk about mental health and about heart rate variability because there's a connection between your brain and your heart. Because if you're under threat, your brain says, right, we need to get the heart pumping faster because we need to get the blood to the muscles because we might need to or we might need to hook somebody, right? So that's what happens. So your brain says there's danger, let's get the heart pumping, let's get all the blood to the muscles and hook him, right, before he hooks you. So that's what's happening for you. So you're already in that state. You don't need to get into cold water for that to happen.
See, I've been doing it, right? And like, I've got, as you say, I've got the lots. I try and do it like 3-4 times a week. And me and you try to do it.
I've done it in the summer. I know in the summer, kind of going into the summer when it was still cold, but when we done it, it was fucking a week ago at 8 o'clock at night. It's not going to be good for you. My body was in pain.
But I suppose, right, so see what people do, see what you do for you, which is good for you, whatever you do. It's none of my business.
I've got a bit of your house coat and I'm
you're fine. That's nice. I would have a wee bit of no. So, I get you. So, from that point of view, people can do with it. I'm not here saying don't do this or don't do that.
Well, some
I'm
folk like
just
the
saying,
gym.
no, but I'm just saying, why do you do what you do? That's the question, because it is about awareness. So the whole thing about me standing in my house coat in the rain was about recognise, acknowledge, investigate and nurture. So recognise how you're feeling. Do you know what I mean? Acknowledge that you're feeling something. So for me, it took me a long time to understand that I actually felt fear. I actually felt frightened. And even when it happens to me, when I start to feel frightened, and that's because my stress levels have started to increase. So I start to feel a wee bit, oh my God, that's when the anxiety kicks in. Am I going to be able to cope? Am I going to be all right? Will I be able to deal with this? And then my brain goes off, we can't deal with this, just shut down. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
So that's what's going on for me. So I need to recognise that that's happening. I need to acknowledge that that's happening. I need to investigate why that's happening. And then I need to nurture that, and I need to nurture me. I need to show myself some compassion and kindness. Somebody says to me, you know, what's the thing that you do? What's the thing that's good for you? Is it running? Is it going to the gym? Is it getting out in fresh air? You know, what is it? And I say that showing myself some kindness.
Aye.
Because what tends to happen is if you're under stress, you then start to berate yourself. You're no good enough, you can't do this, you do this all the time. So don't get involved in that conversation. Show yourself some compassion and some kindness. And that's what it is for me about learning. So I was saying to you about setting up a knowe, and a knowe was about me trying to get people access to the support that they needed, right? So to get people access to counselling, and I was going to do that through the corporate world, through businesses and all that, right? But that was too stressful for me, right? That became overwhelming because there was too many plates to spin. I felt that I wasn't getting any support for the third sector in terms of funding and stuff like that. I found it really difficult. I applied to different agencies, you know, verbally and in writing, asking them for support, and I get rejected. And again, I'm not somebody that copes with rejection very well. I don't think we any is there. But I found that really overwhelming. So that exacerbated the stress. So that became too stressful for me, and I shut down to the point where I can't function and I can't engage with the world. So if somebody's saying to me, oh, go outside, but I can't get off a chair.
Aye, so
So
that's
I
how you were saying
can't.
about the house coat. That's how you didn't. That was the house coat because you don't want to.
You can't get it.
Aye, you're in the house
So
coat.
I then had to recognise that something happened here. I'm shutting down. I need to acknowledge that. I can't just ignore it and carry on regardless. Do you know what I mean? Because I'll kill myself. So I've got to acknowledge that. I've then got to investigate. Well, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? Well, it's because I'm stressed out my nut. Now, it's really, really difficult for me to then say publicly, I can't do the knowe thing anymore. I don't have the nervous system for it. I can't tolerate stress. I don't have the nervous system to set up a business, to spin plates of social media, to try and get businesses on board, to try and get counsellors on board, and try and coordinate all that stuff myself in order to try and help and make an impact in people's lives that are experiencing problems with mental health. It's far too much. Yeah. But I thought I would be able to do that. So it's very difficult. So there's a degree of vulnerability where I need to say, hands up, I can't do that. But I can't do it.
At least you tried it, but
But that's
amazing,
no. So that's a positive, and lots of, you know, the fact that you got in touch and said, you know, we want to talk to you. The fact that, you know, the Misfit Moss says, I want to talk to you. It's interesting what you're saying. That blows me away, because that's the whole reason that I wanted to start the conversation. Because once people, and it's not about, oh, that guy in a house coat says that, therefore that's the answer. No, it's no. Go and find it out for yourself.
As you said, everybody's different. There's that many things out there, and
Go and find out what the problem is. So I'm throwing it out there that it's a problem of childhood trauma. Jails are full of people that have experienced trauma. They're no bad people. Might not have done very nice things, but the vast majority of people that are in prison have experienced childhood trauma. The vast majority of people that are experiencing addiction, and addiction's a huge problem, even for Western Bartonshire. Suicide's a huge problem, even for Western Bartonshire. So the people that are living in Western Bartonshire, you know, suicide, addiction, poverty, all this stuff, that's all largely, the vast majority of cases is to do with problems of childhood trauma. Now you can recognise, acknowledge, investigate and nurture that and say, right, let me understand that, let me look at that. Or you can say, that's a lot of shite, I'm away deep water, cold water swimming. If you're not,
I've done it, but see, I was like, actually,
so have I. I've done it as well, and that's no, but that's part of the thing, and that's what's. So see, when you also experience problems with your mental health, there's a thing where you lack agency, so you're vulnerable. So see, if somebody says to you, "Oh, you've got problems with depression," or go and stand in the corner on one leg for 20 minutes, and that'll cure your depression. Go cold water swimming. I'd be in the buff.
Oh, that's what
cold water swimming. Cold water swimming in the nude's going to fucking make you feel better. Oh, happy days.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? So that's the danger when it comes to mental health in people. So there's a danger that there's a lot of snake oil salesmen saying this is what you need today. This is going to make you feel better. No, the reality is you know what's good for you. You know what's going to help you, and it's only you that knows how you feel. Nobody else knows how you feel. But by sitting down in a relationship with somebody that's ethical, that the person's trained, that is non-judgmental, that is unconditional, you can then discuss with them what's happened in your life and how that's made you feel. Now, you might, through that process, find out that experience of your life actually made you feel frightened. And that then is what actually happens to you, because that's how the brain works. The brain develops patterns. And if the pattern is just a fear response, then that's what's going to kick that first.
What's going to happen.
So you don't then choose. That's no cognitive. That's not a choice. Do I pick door A or do I pick door B? The amygdala, the threat response just kicks in, and then you don't need to choose. You'll just shut down.
Shut down. Well, Paul, you've got a really powerful message. It has been brilliant, but see, before we finish up, you've got llamas. Have you got llamas?
I've not got llamas. The one of the boys, the directors, Kevin, he's got llamas and alpacas and
Have you got
goats.
a picture with them one day?
Aye, no bother.
Come up and we could maybe do one of your wee TikTok videos.
Aye, take him a walk.
Can you?
Aye, put a lid on him and take him a walk. Aye, do that. Why don't you do that? And I'll speak to Kevin and you can do it. Aye. So you can wear your house coat or you can just go and...
I'm going house coat. I'm going in the house coat.
And there's a burn if you're wanting to get in for a dip.
There we go. It's a place for everybody.
Aye, there's a burn.
No, but as I say, an absolute powerful message, Paul.
Aye,
it's
good.
One other thing, what you having for your dinner?
I don't know, I maybe get myself a wee something. Know what I mean?
I had a McDonald's earlier.
Seeing as I'm managing to stay away from the gym, I might get myself a treat.
Yeah, well, that's it.
What about you?
Well, at the McDonald's earlier on, I don't know.
I'll be getting a wee pie and chips.
Oh, you're going to a game, aren't you?
Aye, that'll be folks slaughtering me again,
There you
man.
go. Back your foot, man. Got to do it. Nobody else
No,
got it.
Paul, it's been an absolute
No,
pleasure.
listen, thank both of you for inviting me on, because you are young as well, and I know a lot of young people talk about this, and it's a, know what I mean, podcast of the future, no. So I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to ask me to talk about this, because it is just about having a conversation, and it's no, you know, it's because the guy in the house coat says it. That's what he says, so go and find out for yourself, because it is at the end of the day about you. It's got nothing to do with me.
And see, if there is anybody struggling out there, I know it's easy to sit and watch us for and go, it's easy for them to say, which it probably is, and it probably isn't at times, I know, because it's got a wee bit deeper. But honestly, there is help out there. As you said, 18 people a day, that's 18 too many a day, you know what I mean? So there obviously is help out there, and you say it's a short-term problem, it'll get better in the long term as well. So, but no, it's been a good episode.
And I mean, just, you know, you say if it is, so I had to phone a crisis team because I wanted to get off a bridge. So I would urge anybody that is feeling uncomfortable and thinking it's better if I'm not here, phone the Samaritans, contact your local crisis team. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's in Dumbarton or whatever reason you're in, contact your local crisis team. You'll get the number. Phone 111. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Speak to NHS, because it is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. And once you start to, and it takes time. Everything takes time. And again, that was one of the reasons why I called it a new. Because we don't want to wait.
You want it
We don't want to wait. We want it a new. But it doesn't work like that. So it does take time. But you can, because that's been my experience. I was hopeless. I didn't think it could get any better, and it does. So I would just urge anybody that is struggling to lift the phone and talk to either their GP or a professional or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's great that you've got friends now, but when it comes to matters of mental health, you do really need to speak to people that are versed in it.
Where a man has experienced it. As I say, remember, like, share and subscribe, and thanks to our followers as well.
Aye, thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.